Hey, Emma.
Yes, Madelyn.
What do you call someone who hates an earthy root vegetable or the driving part of a music so much they want to beat it up?
I don't know.
Beat fighter. Hello and welcome to Talk This.
It's dangerous to podcast alone.
Get it? Beat fighter.
Yeah, but I thought you were gonna work knights in there somehow.
I didn't.
No.
Decided to just go with Street Fighter this time.
You just added the B from bikes.
I guess so, yeah. Kneat fighter.
That's what our mashup will be called too, probably.
Beat fighter?
Yeah.
Called bike fighter.
Bike fighter.
It's just to say Street Fighter, but you're wielding bicycles like in Yakuza.
Perfect.
I'm your giggly host, Madelyn.
I'm your dead-faced serious host, Emma.
That's true. And we're so glad to have you here on Talk This. It's felt like a long time since I've come up with a joke, even though it's only been an extra week. But I guess we recorded the last main episode a little bit earlier than we usually. No, I guess we didn't. It's just been feels like a long time. 3 weeks. I know.
I was preparing for this, and I was like, "How do I do this again?" I had just forgotten how these episodes work, even though it's not been a strange amount of time since we did one.
I know. We've never shook up the main episode format, and we're not starting now.
No. One day we'll run out of old games, probably.
No, because new games become old games every year.
I guess that's true.
There's the whole Wii generation of games.
It's coming.
Is coming. And it'll just revitalize. When did Wii Sports come out? When do we get to talk about Wii Sports?
I don't know why you would think I would have that trivia just knocking around in my head.
Fair enough. We can also always go back and re-record episodes about games that we did before I knew that I had to research the game before I talked about it. So there's that, too.
You don't have to.
Yeah.
It's just nice, too.
It's true. I mean, the episodes were shorter back then.
Yes. I appreciated that sometimes.
Oh, well. Listeners, this week, you're going to hear us ramble for 62 minutes. Not ramble, have a lovely and interesting discussion about Street Fighter and Knights and Bikes. Which in itself could be a game title. Street Fighter and Knights and Bikes.
Yeah, it's like a
oh my.
Like a buddy group comedy.
Exactly.
The Street Fighter and the Knights and Bikes.
Perfect. That's a movie, though.
That is a movie. You're right.
We don't do buddy comedies in video games.
We should.
We sort of do.
More buddy comedies.
But it results in things like people getting called half pints for 2.5 games. And it doesn't work. Anyway, I'm excited to talk about these two games. Obviously, this week I have played, although not in the past 2 weeks, both of the games that we're talking about.
Oh, really?
Well, I'm pretty sure that I've played Street Fighter at Barcade, and I've definitely played X-Men Children of the Atom, which is a Street Fighter spin-off at Barcade. So I have played it. I am not good at it. Get that out of the way now. It should not come as a surprise to any listener of more than a week that I am not good at it, but I have played it.
I don't think I've ever played Street Fighter.
Well,
I was looking into it. I was like, I know, what is Street Fighter versus the other fighting games, but I don't remember ever playing Street Fighter specifically.
Well, you'll have to come to Barcade next time you're in New York, because I have tokens from years ago that I still, despite having gone since I bought them, I still have not gotten through them all. We went for my birthday 2 years ago. And got so many tokens. And then they didn't have Galaga, so I didn't use them all. Anyway, we've already sort of started talking about it, but let's talk Street Fighter.
Let's do it.
So Street Fighter, you've probably heard of it. It's a fighting game from Capcom. And the first game was released in 1987 for the arcade cabinet. It's been a little while, I think, since we've talked about an arcade game on the show.
Yeah, I think so.
I can't remember the last one, which doesn't really mean anything since I wipe my memory of each episode from week to week.
Yeah.
But I think it's been a while since we've talked about an arcade game. So Street Fighter, of course, is now a franchise. There are 5 Street Fighter games if you're gonna be really, really reductionist about it, but every one of them has like 20 different spin-offs.
Yeah.
So
and there's like a X series too, right?
What do you mean by that? Do you mean the X-Men series?
No, there's like the X series of games. There's like 3 of them.
Yeah. I mean,
I didn't look into what they are very much, but they're there.
There are way too many Street Fighter games to possibly keep track of all of them. Even when it was in arcade cabinets, they released like 5 different versions of Street Fighter 2.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just not something that you can keep track of. That's why I was surprised. I was surprised a little bit that I was like, oh, only Street Fighter 5? Like, that seems weird. This series has been around for 30 years. More than 30 years. But no, it's just misleading. There's like 15 million games in the Street Fighter universe.
Yeah. Yes. All of them have gotten updated several times to add new characters and stuff like that, too.
Speed up the combat, that kind of thing. So in Street Fighter, you play as Ryu, a martial artist, and you're in like an international tournament. And your friend can play, it's a 2-player cabinet, who can play as your rival, your American rival, Ken.
Of course.
The most American of names.
You can also play as Ken through the main story if you beat your friend playing as Ryu first.
Dang. Adding insult to injury.
Yeah. There's no real functional difference between the two, at least in the first game, though. Just one's American and one's Japanese, I assume. Yes.
Ryu is a Japanese martial artist.
Yes.
So in the original Street Fighter, you're in this tournament and you basically go around fighting people in different countries who are, themed bosses to that country. And in the original arcade cabinet, they originally released it with like punch pads. Did you read about this?
No.
Like pressure pads. As opposed to the 6-button format.
Oh, this does sound familiar, actually.
They were talking about it. I read it in the summary on Wikipedia, and then they were talking about it in this oral history I was reading. And they said, like, everyone was, like, bloodying up their hands, and they didn't like it. And the game didn't sell well at first. It didn't do great. It did okay, but didn't do great at first because of that. And then once they switched to it being a button system, that it worked a lot better, and people liked it a lot better.
I mean, I'm absolutely shocked to hear that is the case.
In some ways it sounds appealing, like you kind of get to actually punch,
Yeah, it just... Once you get enough people on it, I'm sure whatever the punch thing would be worn down, and then somebody cuts open their hand on it somehow, you know?
Fair enough. And they introduced some very iconic bosses, including M. Bison, which I just can't get over.
He wasn't called that in certain territories.
Including the United States.
Yes.
So M. Bison is a boss character, a fighter character, based on Mike Tyson. M. Bison.
Yeah.
And because of Mike Tyson's Punch-Out, and because he was a real person, in the 80s especially, he's still a real person now, but
he's
especially a real person in the 80s. Because of that, when they were doing it in America, they were like, we can't do this. But I think because of some of the restrictions on, I'm not sure if it was development time or capability in the cabinet, but, they could just switch the names around.
Yeah.
They weren't actually able to rename it or anything like that. They just switched some of the names of the other bosses. So M. Bison became something completely different that I don't remember off the top of my head. But, it's so funny.
Street Fighter 2 is the more, I guess, influential.
Yeah, and that's one that I want
game.
to talk about as well, but I'm laying the groundwork.
Yeah, and it's important to start with the first one. But in the original Street Fighter, and in a lot of games around that time, you could play as, like, one character or a couple or something like that, right? Like, you did the fighting, but it was with the one protagonist, quote-unquote, character. But Street Fighter 2 let you pick between a whole host of different playable characters.
Yep.
With different move sets and different sort of strengths and weaknesses as well, which actually adds some sort of, like, strategy to it. And you can pick what works for you as opposed to having to just, figure out Ryu or Ken's movesets.
And even from character to character, you have a wider move set than you did in the first game for those one. Like, it seems like maybe you had, like, 9 moves total, but really 6, because the special moves were really hard to trigger in the first game. Whereas in the second game, you had, like, 30-plus moves per character, plus combo capability. Which is weird to think of that as being a thing that had to be a new thing.
Yeah.
But it was.
I mean, multiple characters in fighting games is also a weird thing to think about.
Right.
Needing to be a new thing. Because that's just, like, the fighting game formula now, right?
It shocked me that Street Fighter, the original, did not have that.
Yeah.
Because that's what I think of as being, when I think of Street Fighter, that's what I think of as being iconic about it, is you have to, like, choose your fighter.
Yeah. I did think it was interesting, though, as I was looking through, like, all the different characters. Like, they don't really have a very super consistent cast.
What do you mean by that?
That was interesting. It's like, it's not like in Street Fighter 3, like, there's all the characters from Street Fighter 2 plus new ones. It's like, there's some of the characters from Street Fighter 2 plus new ones.
Yeah.
And then in the next one, there's some characters from previous game plus some new ones. And stuff like that. Like, I was looking at just, like, a list of, like, what characters were in each game. And it's really just, like, Ryu and Ken have been in every game. Mm-hmm. And then Chun-Li has been in every game since the second one. But there weren't any other, at least from the glance I took on the Wikipedia chart, there weren't any other characters that had been playable in every single game.
Akuma is in a lot of them. There's, like, a bonus character. You can unlock that character somehow. But yeah.
I mean, I guess that makes sense, because when I, think of Street Fighter, I think of Ryu and Chun-Li mostly.
Yeah.
Which, if they've been the most sort of iconic ones, I guess makes sense why they're the ones that stick in my brain.
Well, also the guy from the blonde-haired guy.
Guile?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think of him, too.
Yeah.
Mostly in a meme-y way, I think, but still.
That's fair.
Anyway, we're going to talk more about Street Fighter 2, but to talk about it, it was a massive, massive success. Street Fighter 1 did fine, and then they pivoted to making this team pivoted, or the most members of this team who stayed at the company, to making, like, a side-scrolling fighter game, because some of them had gone to America and seen that that's what people liked playing, so they decided to make that. Or to hear one of the guys tell it, it's like, they wanted me to make a Street Fighter thing, but I never do what my bosses tell me. So, I decided not to. And also partially, so they made this game called Final Fight, which was sort of meant to be a sequel to Street Fighter, and they originally some of them wanted to call it Street Fighter 2, even though it was not the same game. Mm-hmm. It was like a side-scrolling fighter. But then, and I'm getting a lot of this stuff from this really great oral history of Street Fighter 2 on Polygon, that everyone should check out, because even as someone who is not really a Street Fighter player, I found it really interesting. Mm-hmm. According to some of them, because Street Fighter's reputation was kind of bad from the punching stuff, they decided to call it Final Fight instead, so it wouldn't be associated with that. Some of them were like, no, that's not what it happened. Which is always interesting when you're talking about something, I guess, that happened, almost 30 years ago. People are going to remember it differently. But then
Final Fight did become its own sort of franchise, though, right?
I think so.
I mean, that's what Terry is from.
Yeah.
Isn't it?
I think so. So after they made Final Fight, though, they switched back, just because, again, this guy, they wanted him to make Final Fight 2. And Okamoto, who is now a real bigwig at Capcom, I think, but at the time was just like the game's director, sort of. They didn't have titles that quite match up with what we think of as titles today. Mm-hmm. But he's just like a nut. So he was like, yeah, we're gonna do Street Fighter 2. No, but like there's a whole team. You should read this article, Emma, because it's wild. This whole team is like just like pranking each other all the time and just like crazy dudes. Like Okamoto would like pants the American people every time they came. Like one time he sent like a disc to the Capcom USA saying it was new game material that the guy then put in to show in front of like his vice president, and it was porn.
Why would you not review it first?
I don't know.
Even if it was like new game material, wouldn't you want to look at it and be like, oh, like this looks good, this looks bad?
Nope, apparently not.
No?
Apparently not.
Oh boy.
And then the art director, Yasuda. Okay, I want to read this quote from because it's just so funny. At one point, Yasuda wanted to live a healthy life, so he said, "Okay, I'm going to drink milk." So he'd always buy these little packs of milk. He'd be working, and then he'd reach down to his little milk packs and drink them. Around his desk, he had like 100 of these packs. So he'd grab one, shake it, and whenever he'd find one with milk in it, he'd drink it and put it back without even looking at it. And he never knew what the expiration dates were. So he started drinking milk to be healthy, but he was always complaining he had diarrhea.
Oh, God.
He also, when Capcom moved offices, he was known for, like, sleeping on the floor a lot, like, never going home, just sleeping at his desk. So he tested the floors on all of the floors to make sure they were comfortable and sleepable.
Good for him. It's like going apartment hunting, right?
Exactly. And also, in the midst of this wild and crazy team, we have Yoko Shimomura of Kingdom Hearts fame.
She did the soundtrack?
She did.
Wow.
Yeah, she worked at Capcom. She said it was pretty random that she, like, it's just like the sound department, they'd, like, when you were free, they'd be like, do you want to do this game? And they had a choice of 2 games and happened to pick Street Fighter 2. Mm-hmm. Won her first big award for it.
Wow.
She seems to be the normal one of the bunch.
Yeah. I'm not surprised.
Yeah. Anyway, so wild team making this game, basically, is the too long didn't listen summary of that.
Yeah.
But Street Fighter 2 was a massive success. Both for Capcom and for the arcade owners. At least until I couldn't find more recent stats than this, but at least until 2008, the SNES version of Street Fighter 2 was Capcom's best-selling game of all time for a game that released in 1991.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that's not surprising either. Oh.
I mean, it as we've talked about, it basically defined a genre in a way that's hard to think about now because every game is based on these tenets.
Yeah. Every fighting game, yeah.
Yeah, not every game.
Every game is based on Street Fighter 2. In this essay, I will.
Street Fighter 2 invented characters.
No video games had characters before Street Fighter 2. Not even the original Street Fighter.
It didn't.
Didn't have characters.
Nope. But it made a ton of money for Capcom because, so sort of number one, I mean, everybody liked it, right? Duh. But the arcade owners wanted it so badly that basically the sales department would tell them, okay, like, to get this game, you have to pay off your whole account to me, plus pay for the cabinet.
Wow.
And they
That's
would do
smart,
it.
though.
Yeah. So this game cabinet that cost like $2,500, they'd use to turn a sale of like the $20,000, kind of on the account, which is crazy. But worth it because, I don't have, obviously, not unsurprisingly. Don't have that much knowledge into arcade economics of the 1990s. But I read about it a little bit. And so, because it's a 2-player game, right, and the developers talked about this as well as some arcade owners in some stuff I was reading, but 2-player game, not only is it going to make more money for the arcade, right, because you're letting 2 people play at once.
Right.
But also, it's going to make the players feel better, because they get to, basically, like, they're paying for half of the time, right?
Right.
So, they're only paying their 100 yen, or their whatever it is in the US, but they're getting to play for twice as long, because it's 2 people, essentially.
Right.
So they don't feel gypped by having to, like, pay more for a game. But also, like, they were talking about, okay, if we'd, like, up to the difficulty on, like, a side-scrolling game, right? People would feel gypped by that if they were going to pay more and more and more, because they would feel like they were being screwed out of their money.
Right.
Not unlike the microtransaction debates that we have today. But if they're playing against their friends, like, the difficulty is set at their own level, so they can't complain.
Yeah.
Anyway, it seems like normally doing, like, $800 a week was a pretty good, $800 a week was a pretty good arcade cabinet. Like, that was an arcade cabinet that was doing pretty well. And these ones were, like, clearing, like, $1,300 a week. So they were just, like, crazy, crazy sellers. And if you bought a second one, it wouldn't, like, cannibalize the first ones. It would just also do that amount, because people were waiting to play. So, there you go, folks. Microtransactions. The early years.
One more thing before we should probably move on to our other game.
Wait, think about it, though. I wonder how much, like, we whine about paying $60 for a game now.
Yeah.
I wonder how much money people will put into Street Fighter over their Street Fighter time.
Probably a lot. But it doesn't feel like as much, right? Because you put in, like, a couple of dollars a day or a week or whatever.
Yeah.
So it doesn't feel like you're putting in as much money at once.
Yeah.
But this, I felt really dumb, but I didn't realize that the Hadoken was from Street Fighter. That was like a big meme for a while. Like the pose and yelling it out, I seem to recall.
Memes transcend their source material.
I know, I just didn't know what it was from. I think I just figured it was from, like, Naruto or something. But it is not. It is from Street Fighter.
It is not from Naruto.
So yeah, that was my discovery of the day.
Thanks, Emma.
You're welcome. And in case you don't know what a Hadoken is, it's like you, like, gather power and then you, like, put your hands out with, like, your heels of your hands next to each other. And I think you yell Hadoken.
Surely that is also a Naruto thing, though.
I know, right? It feels like it is.
Hulu has been advertising Naruto at me, and it's like, you know what? If I end up quarantined, like, I'll think about it. Like, maybe.
Like, there's, like, 700 episodes, Malin, so I think it would get you through your quarantine.
You seen the size of my apartment? What else do I have to do? Buy a Street Fighter cabinet, maybe.
Yeah. You could, I don't know where you would put that, but you could buy one.
Who needs a bed?
That's what they've taught you, this oral history. You just need a
Pretty much, I'll test the floor.
Yeah.
Couple other last notes before I go, because I have a couple other little gems I need to share. So first of all, a quote from Yoshinori Ono, who I think is the current series producer of Street Fighter, talking about his first experiences with the game in college. It was already really difficult for me to pay for college tuition, but despite that, I kept just throwing 100 yen coins into the machine over and over again, forgetting all about tuition. So there you go. Gaming addiction. Real or not real? Who knows? And then, of course, a reminder that there is a Street Fighter live film from 1994 starring
Of course there is.
Jean-Claude Van Damme as Guile.
Oh, right. Yeah.
It's not very well reviewed.
Yeah.
Does not break the video game movie mold.
Aren't there, specifically, Chun-Li movies, too?
Maybe. Yeah, I
Like
can't
The
say I did
Legend
that
of
much
Chun-Li.
research into terrible Street Fighter filmography.
I think Street Fighter has a few.
There are a lot of animes and animated series and mangas and stuff, but I would not be surprised to find out that there are more live-action movies that I just blanked out on for my own sake. Here's a question for you, Emma. If you got to choose your, dope name to be credited on for your work on an arcade game, what would it be? Here are a few examples. So the first game was produced and directed by Takashi Nishiyama, who continued to work on future games, who credited himself as Piston Takashi in the game, and planned by Hiroshi Matsumoto, credited as Finish Hiroshi.
I don't know how cool those are, to be honest.
Right, they're trying hard to be cool.
Are they punny?
I don't know. It could be.
I wonder.
Maybe.
I don't know. No, I don't know what I would credit myself as. Well, neither of those.
Think about it for the new website.
Okay.
Last but not least, it was crazy for me to read all these stories from people. There were a lot of 25-year retrospectives on the series. And they're talking about playing the game in pizza shops and grocery stores. And
grocery stores?
Yeah, they had an arcade cabinet. It's crazy for me to think about these games being everywhere.
Yeah.
And going to a grocery store near you to play a video game.
The grocery store is weird. To be fair, one of the pizza shops near our childhood home does have
that's
Pac-Man.
True. I hadn't even thought of that.
Yeah.
I can't believe that hadn't even crossed my mind. But just to think of these people gathering in these random places in this pre-strategy guide era where someone could just kick your butt because they knew a combo you didn't know.
Yeah.
Or could exploit a bug you didn't know. It's just it feels like this crazy Wild West in a way that all these people look back on really, really fondly, and I'm sure was not as fun as they make it sound.
I'm sure. That's how it always is, right?
But still. Now we're all just drinking spoiled milk, diarrhea at our desks, and feeling isolated. As opposed to... What?
Great.
Speaking of probably drinking spoiled milk and feeling isolated, Knights and Bikes.
And it's a co-op game, so it's the opposite of feeling isolated. We've got two...
I meant the characters in the game. I didn't mean the local co-op. This is I guess Street Fighter is local competitive, but it's local week. 2-player week.
Local multiplayer.
Thank you. Here on Talk This. Not that every week on Talk This isn't local multiplayer week.
We are constantly pushing that agenda.
I'm pushing it. You can't see me, but I'm pushing right now.
So, Knights and Bikes is a game that came out... Did it come out this year or last year? I'm not actually 100% sure.
I thought it was this year.
This year? I mean 2020 versus 2019.
Oh, I had forgotten it's a new year.
Yeah. I'm not actually sure. It came out recently. I think it came out on the Nintendo Switch this year. But it was also on Steam and PlayStation.
Yes, it was initially released in August, so last year, which I did not identify as a not this year.
Yeah.
Yikes.
And it's a co-op adventure sort of game with some puzzle solving and combat elements that's very much inspired by The Goonies, which is not really something I have reference for because I have never watched The Goonies.
I've seen parts of The Goonies.
And I know what it is. It's Stranger Things sort of thing, except I think a little more lighthearted.
I already outed myself as someone who hates Stranger Things.
Probably.
Here it is. I didn't like it. Maybe the nostalgia just doesn't hit right for me, I think. And it's too slow. Anyway, go on, Emma. I'm not going to turn this into my Stranger Things.
I think we don't have a lot of frame of reference for, like, 80s movies, to be honest.
Yeah.
I think that's our issue with Stranger Things.
It's not The Princess Bride.
Yeah.
That's the point.
Anyway, you follow the adventures of two young girls, Demelza and Nessa, who are exploring this island looking for lost treasure so that Demelza's dad doesn't have to sell their home, basically.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
Nessa seems... I know that they've been described in all the press as two young girls. So this is the game that I got this week to actually play. Even though I've played Street Fighter and Street Fighter spin-offs in arcades before, I didn't seek it out for this week. Instead, I bought Knights and Bikes. And Emma and I thought about playing it at PAX. It was at PAX. But did not, because there was a line, and I think it was Saturday, and we were tired. But we got this one, and Josh and I played, like, an hour and a half of it or so. So, like, through the first kind of mission thing in the golf course. And, yeah, Nessa is of indeterminate age.
Yeah, I think she's older than Demelza, but I think by young girls, they just mean that neither of them are, like, adults.
See, I realize that, and I have the context of that from things that I have read. That's not as clear.
I mean, I watched a little bit of it, and Nessa seemed very teenagery.
Yeah. I mean,
particularly, like, how much she's, like, kid, you know?
She rode over in a boat by herself.
She's, I assume she ran away to look for treasure.
That seems to maybe be happening.
Yeah. But anyway, you can get some bikes, too.
We have there's been not that much biking yet in this first hour and a half. Some knights, I'll give them the knights part, but very little bikes.
I read that you get only one bike first that you have to share, and then eventually you get 2 bikes.
See, in the amount that I have played, there was not even any sharing of the bike. We just did a race where Josh had a bike and I had to run on foot.
You couldn't have, like, taken it from him?
Did not seem to be. And I did not try, but didn't seem to be an option.
Okay. It also has this very, like, paper craft sort of look, I guess. Mm-hmm. Not like in, like, you'd be tricked. It's not like Yoshi's Woolly World or anything where you'd be tricked into thinking, like, it was actual crafts, but in terms of the actual art style, it's, like, a little bit abstract, I guess.
Yeah, and that's not that surprising, given that the development team, Foam Sword, is made up of former members of Media Molecule, best known for the Little Big Planet series.
Yeah. And Dreams now, I guess.
I guess Dreams. But come on, I said best known. I think I'm fine in saying they're best known for Little Big Planet.
Yeah.
Dreams
True.
is getting there.
True.
You know, call me when I've played through all of the Dreams.
I did get Dreams, so I need to put it in and see what it is, because I still don't know.
You keep telling me, I'm too tired for Dreams. Every time you talk about what
I'm too tired for all my games. But especially Dreams.
Well, I've enjoyed, so here's my review of the first hour and 15 minutes or so of Knights and Bikes.
Sure.
I've enjoyed it. It seems like the kind of game that you could definitely play with a younger person. Or an older person. To throw it back to I feel like that was one of the very first issue-based side quests, was what makes a game good to play with someone who's substantially less experienced or younger or older than you.
Yeah, I think it was.
And I think that Knights and Bikes falls really neatly into that category. Because at least so far, the difficulty level, and granted, this is the first hour of the game, but the difficulty level is not high. The puzzles are not super hard. It's been a while since I've played a local co-op game, so just the novelty of actually getting to play a game together is driving me through it right now. And it's a cute little world and that sort of stuff. And Like, the golf course was cool. Crazy wild golf course. Seems like the game is going to be sad a little bit.
I think they'll probably learn some
valuable
some
life
lessons.
Yes,
Yeah.
I think that she and the dad are going to get along better at the end. But does that make this a dad game?
It's more of
More of a daughter game, I guess, but
yeah.
still.
I wrote a little bit article about this in school, about, like, there's the daddening of games, and now there's sort of, like, the daughterification of games.
Like what? What other games are daughter games?
The Last of Us 2.
I guess that's true.
I can't remember the other ones I wrote about. That one's the one that's on my head, but there are definitely other ones that I pointed out as being daughter games. Tomb Raider also, as about, like, the first one in the reboot, at least, was, like, Lara, like, following in her dad's footsteps or whatever, or, like, trying to prove her dad was, like, not crazy or something.
Yeah, I do feel like, and that's obviously not in the indie space, but I feel like in the indie space there are definitely other games that I can't think of right now, but it feels like a trope of it being, like, dad and daughter.
Yeah. Indivisible right now is a bit of a daughter game.
It is a daughter game. That must be what I was thinking of. Her dad has been dead for so long now that I forget about him.
Yeah, it's less of a daughter game, because I think that even though, like, the dad does factor into what she's doing, like, he's not quite as over-present, you know?
Yeah.
But it's still sort of a daughter game.
Well, I'm into it, sort of. I mean, you know, let's get some moms in there, I guess.
Yeah.
Who at least get to, like, stay alive. Or
Yeah.
not be, like, destruction goddesses.
Yeah. I mean, I certainly prefer daughter games to dad games, I think. I like that trend better. But it would be nice to see some, like, you know, cool older women, too.
Or where are the son games? Not about dad, like mother-son games.
Oh yeah, where's mother-son games?
Where are my Oedipal games? Where are they?
Knights and Bikes was also a Kickstarter game. Which it feels like a lot of successful indie games are Kickstarter games.
Well, where else are they going to get the money?
I know. Well, they also are published by Double Fine, so they probably gave them some money. I mean, that's still, like, a smaller company to be publishing you, but, you know, that's still a source of funds.
Shouldn't Double Fine be running their own, like, 20th Kickstarter right about now?
Well, they're working on Psychonauts 2 right now.
That's what I'm talking about.
Though they were recently bought by Xbox. So they
right.
or
That's
by Microsoft.
Not really recent anymore, is it? Right? That happened like a year ago.
Yeah, that was like last E3 maybe.
E3. Did you mean the last E3?
Yes, the last E3. They haven't canceled it yet.
Yeah. Okay.
But I think they're gonna.
Anyway, to get back to the topic at hand, Knights and Bikes has been fun, and it's in more. I can imagine it being pretty dull if you were playing by yourself.
Yeah,
it's not.
I was thinking about getting it too, but I was like, it just seems like it's so made to play with another person.
I mean, I did read one review that said the computer is pretty capable, so the AI is pretty good and not frustrating for the most part, at least, which is good. But yeah, it doesn't feel like it has enough there holding it together that I'd want to play it by myself.
Yeah. I mean, and that's I think, uncharitable way to put it. And you've played more of it, so maybe it's still accurate. But I think it just is meant to be played with another person.
Right. I'm sorry.
So
that I should recalibrate. I don't want to be here in my local multiplayer episode making it sound like making a game that's designed for local multiplayer is a bad thing, especially if the single player experience doesn't hold up. I feel like we expect all games to have good single player experiences.
Yeah.
And that's maybe not fair.
Yeah. Just because it feels like they're focusing more on, like, the whimsicality of it than necessarily, like, the fun, engaging single-player gameplay, you know?
Yeah. Well, the golf course level was very fun and visually interesting, and I'm excited to see what other puzzles await me. Because certainly none of the puzzles were, like, brain-scratcher challenging, which, to be honest, is fine, and maybe where the puzzle game has to go these days in some ways, because no one has any patience for anything being hard.
Yeah.
As we learned at that Adventure Games panel, right?
Yeah. Unless there's some person who is all about the witness or something. Some intellectual.
What a just disparaging way of using the word intellectual.
But I will say that, like, whether this is necessarily it or not, but, like, this and, like, A Way Out, and stuff like that, I like that there's more games that are very sort of specifically designed for two people. Right? I really like that idea that, like, you're specifically taking a concept and deciding that, like, this, you have to have this number of players. Or you should for the full experience, right?
Yeah.
A Way Out, it was literally, you have to. But this one feels like you should, which I think is cool. And I wish more games would do that.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely bold. Although, you know, as we move into this future where everyone is going to have a roommate for the rest of their life, except Emma, I guess.
Maybe we'll see how much they've raised the rent on me.
Maybe it makes sense that we're designing more experiences that are specifically for multiple people. Because if you're going to be playing your games loudly until 1 in the morning, your roommate might as well be involved. That sounded like a dig at Clickbait Boyfriend. It was not. He doesn't, like, stay up late playing games. He can't. Our television is 6 inches from the bed.
He could, still.
He could. Like, I guess theoretically, yes.
You just set the air mattress up in the kitchen.
Fair enough. Fair enough. That would last. That's a good cohabitating relationship right there.
But yeah, I'm just saying that I like the creative space that's over in designing for multiple people. Although I do understand that it's, like, probably financially challenging.
Yeah.
In certain ways.
Certainly. I mean, you want your game to be playable by as many lonely people as you possibly can.
Yeah.
Well, on that dark note, how do you want to combine these games?
Little kids beat each other up.
That's called bully, and it's controversial.
I was about to say that.
Grown men beat each other up with bicycles.
Yeah, this is a tricky one.
Okay, you're a child.
Okay.
And
I sure am.
You have nightmares and you're afraid of the dark.
Okay.
But in your dreams, you are strong. You discover that you are strong and you have the ability to fight your nightmares.
Shazam.
Is that Shazam?
In dreams. No, Shazam, he just literally turns into a grown human adult.
And you go around
it's the dream Shazam.
You go around the different dream worlds, beating up nightmares that
are suspiciously themed by country.
Yes. With vaguely offensive theme music. The way they talk about composing the theme music in that game, she was like, I'm like, Yoko, no. Like, she was like, I looked at the background, and I didn't write music that's actually what it sounds like in India, for example. I wrote music that sounded like what I thought it sounded like.
I mean, to be fair, that is how most, like, Indian-style music is composed.
I'm sure it's not that bad in the actual game. Just reading it in, like, multiple interviews, I was like, ugh, don't talk about it that way.
Yeah. I like that idea.
Or it's like you bike around the neighborhood fighting bullies.
Yeah, who are suspiciously from multiple countries.
No, Emma.
I'm sorry, it's just like thinking. I'm trying to think of like
Cannot be gentrification the game.
I'm trying to think of like specifically Street Fighter-y things, and one of the things is that everybody is like country aside.
Okay, different prep schools.
It's like, I think you have to come up with something, like, the Nightmares is maybe a little better, because I think you have to come up with something, like, distinct. And I guess different prep schools can be distinct, but, like, at the end of the day, they're still, like, all prep schools.
Right, they're all 11-year-olds. That's no good.
Yeah.
The only problem I'm seeing with my Nightmares thing is in the player versus player, I don't want to force it to be somebody has to be a nightmare and somebody has to be a kid, but I also don't want kid-on-kid fights. So, you dig?
What's wrong with some kid-on-kid violence?
I don't think it's gonna sell well.
You know, most violence on kids is perpetuated by kids. Probably.
Probably.
I don't know the stats.
Yikes. Okay. Gonna leave that one. Alright. Maybe instead you fight characters from different 80s movies. It's like Street Fighter, but it's like Goonies edition.
That would be licensing hell.
Well, yeah. I know. Seemed like a good idea at the time.
I mean, it's not a bad idea, just also, like, we would end up with some M. Bison situations.
That's fine. They're all like M. Bison. The Schmoonies.
Yeah, like, okay, sure, they're all, like, inspired by 80s movies, but the names are all on different ones.
Yeah.
So the Schmoonies aren't named the Schmoonies, they're, like, named, like, I don't know. What are 80s movies?
The Lunch Bunch.
Is The Lunch Bunch a movie?
No,
The Breakfast Club.
See,
yeah, like that.
You go for it. The Supper
It just
Club.
sounds like a movie.
No,
Yeah,
I can't do the
okay.
Lunch Bunch because that's John Mulaney. It'd have to be the, like, Tea Time Brigade.
Tea Time Brigade. That's fun, sure. That's in keeping with the spirit of
And then
Street Fighter history.
Shrawley Ringpald is, like, the final boss.
Oh. Is Alien from the 80s? Is that an 80s movie? Yeah, okay.
Extraterrestrial ET. Shoot.
TE.
I feel like this is a terrible idea, but I do feel like it captures the spirit.
Yeah. We came up with, like, a good idea, and then this is our mess that we must always offer upon the world.
Here it is. 80s fighter.
If somebody takes it and runs with it, we will not pay the licensing fees.
Absolutely not.
You brought this on yourself.
It's all parody. The Schmoomies.
Okay.
Oh man, I really like the Schmoomies. I think the Schmoomies should be the title.
Kids versus the Schmoomies. The Schmoomies and the kids.
And then you can play as your favorite 80s character.
Yes.
The Stranger Things kids will be like DLC.
Sure, yeah.
Also, you can play as all of their dads, just because.
It doesn't make any sense.
Because then it's a kid game, you know, the dad Schmoomies.
The dad Schmoomies. Great. Alright, we've done it. Let's stop talking about the Schmoomies and their dads, okay?
Alright, folks. Are you interested in hearing more about our upcoming game, The Schmoomies vs. Dad? You should follow us on social media. We're on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Talk This Podcast, and on YouTube at Talk This Sisters. So follow us there to get all the updates on, I guess, the Shmoomies, apparently, because that's what we're doing now. But also the show and things we're playing, and every once in a while we retweet good stuff, so you should follow us. But while you're there, you'll probably notice some links to our website, which you should check out too. It's www.talkthispodcast.com. While you're there, you can see the games that are in the hat that we're about to pick from, read more about me and Emma, at least circa 2017.
Gotta really update the site. Gotta do it.
See the site in its hopefully final days before we give it a little facelift. And also check out the blog, where you can read long-running series Click Week Boyfriend, where my boyfriend, one of these days, is going to finish up Kingdom Hearts Remind, if I can get a couple hours to do it. And also Split Screen, where Emma and I are watching Coffee Prince, the K-drama, and My Hero Academia.
You bet.
But more importantly, you should subscribe to the show! We are on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, TuneIn, Spotify, Pandora, on the app and on the website. Everywhere that you can find podcasts, you can find Talk This. And if you can't find it for some reason, you can find our RSS feed and add it to your podcast player, and it'll play it too. I learned that this week.
Wow.
I'm learning all about podcasts.
Love it.
And while you're there subscribing, hey, leave us a rating and a review. I sound really enthusiastic, but I really am. Please do.
Yeah, we are.
Emma, you want to pick games from the hat for 2 weeks from now?
I sure do. So, our old game is going to be Vagrant Story.
Awesome.
Now it's Wikipediaing as we speak.
Vagrant Story?
And our new game is going to be Death Stranding.
Nice! Gonna play some more, Emma.
I do. I need to play some more. I will never finish Death Stranding. Oh boy.
Are you excited for when the virus turns Death Stranding into a reality?
Please.
Just for a couple weeks.
Just for a couple weeks, sure.
Just UPS men running around. No one else. Everyone desperate for human connection.
I'll start sending my mailmen, emails with 1,000 emojis.
Hey, you know your post office people, so you're already there.
Anyway, but we're
week.
talking about our last 7 weeks of gaming next week.
It's turned into 7 weeks twice in a row now.
I know. It's not on purpose.
What
What held us up last time? What
game of the decade.
Right, that's what it was.
So it's not intentional. It's not intended to be 7 weeks. It's just happened to be that way for the last 14 weeks.
Yes.
But we'll be talking about what we've played. I guess we won't be in time. When does Animal Crossing come out? Will we be in time?
The 20th. So no.
So we
not
won't really
even
be
close.
in time to talk about our Animal Crossing experience. Sorry, everybody. And we won't recap PAX again because there's already an episode about that.
Yeah.
But I've been playing a lot of games. Have you been playing a lot of games?
I sure have. Too many games. I've become you.
So it's going to be a great episode, folks. You should tune in. All right. Emma, I think that's all from me for this episode of Talk This. Do you want to send the people off?
Sure. After a yawn. This week, I hope that you hit somebody with a bike.